Hello. Minor things loaded, like I just have the SRD in case I want to test something. So I'm trying to keep it minimal. I've just added some assets to the campaign folder, and in the data folder, this is more like a top level access. So if I go to Arctic Snow, I have a bunch of assets here. I have a winter city, I have ice tokens, heavy winter city maps, cold and random snowy maps, and then some more assets. So assets would be like bookshelves and those sort of things. So these were created by different groups of artists, but the main one that I'm going to focus on today is going to be Kris Game Tile Warehouse. He's one of my favorite cartographers. So that is why I am going to use his. But last week I used some of Tom Cardos's. I really like his maps too. So those are my top, and Zovia as well. Those are my top 3 artists right there for maps. So now I have this snowy streets. And if I open this up, I'm going to get a variety of different maps. So let me see what this looks like. So yeah, this looks like, this might be a Kris map. I have to look at it closer. Yeah, nope, this is from, these are from Mr. Valor. Let's see. So I'll go to heavy winter. Okay, yeah, these are definitely Kris's maps. These are mainly showing from the outdoors. So I'm going to pick one that's kind of complicated, kind of not. Let's see, something that has more than one feature. So here's one that has this fountain and then some, looks like some stuff is indoors. Like, it's hard to tell. So I will go on to the next one. Okay, here we go. Here's one that has like some walls and such. And by double clicking on these assets, I'm able to preview the images. So I don't want one that just doesn't have much features. So I think the one with the pond is going to be a good example. So I'll go ahead and use this one. So when I want to use an asset and I have one picked, I have this preview window opened. Going to images and maps. Since I don't have a group already, I'm going to create one. So I'm going to click on Edit Group, click the green plus button, and I'm just going to call this Winter Maps. And this could be used in anything that you play, especially like the Ream of the Frost Maiden, or if you have an older campaign such as the Crystal Shard, Legacy of the Crystal Shard, anything like that would work really well. So once I have that created, I'm going to click away from it, I'm going to select it, and now I'm going to create image from record from this asset. What you'll get is a big pop-up, which is normal. And now I'd have to apply the line of sight. So this is heavy snow. That's why you can't see hardly anything. So that's part of the reason that winter maps are hard to do, because of that reason. All the lines are pretty obscured here. So it just depends on how you work, but I'm going to go ahead and try it. And then I'm going to also try to do something a little bit more clear than that. So let me open up the assets again. So I want to show, an easier, more clear way of doing it. That map would be kind of tough to show online. So let me try something else here. So I am going to the assets and the data folder, and that's tokens. So I need to be in images, and then data. And here's some of Tom Cardos's maps. let's just say they're very detailed. So this one is a cavern map, which might be a cool thing to do. There's a nighttime and a daytime one, and this one doesn't have a grid. So I can drag and drop instead of doing the preview window, and that will bring me to this, which has a decorated cavern. And this has some moving water. It's frozen, but there's like water underneath. And then there's some really snowy, like ice cavern-like stuff here. So here's another choice that we can work on if you want. So this is like a frozen cavern. And then I'll give us one more choice. And anybody that's watching, if you want to vote on anything, let me know and I'll work on it. So the next asset is I'm going to pull one out of my computer. And let me see, it is in I have a storage drive where I keep all this stuff. So let's see, I want to go to, I have a local drive where I store all this stuff. And then I have a old downloads folder that was full of stuff. So I want to kind of use that as a storage area instead of cluttering up my hard drive. So now what I want to do is come in here and go to like winter or something like that. And as you can see, there is a bunch of winter stuff here. So here's a good example of something that you could do to kind of make things interesting for. And then there's the heroic maps that could also be done with line of sight. And then here's some more of Kris's maps that are the ones that are kind of hard to see, but they're covered with snow. That's why. Then I have other assets in here. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a few things here. So here's one with a, cool, I like this. So here is a boreal kind of, I guess a kind of a nighttime map. And there's also an image that goes with it. And then there's this heroic map, which I can grab those because they're fairly easy to see. I'm going to copy these from this folder. And I'm going to open up my assets folder. And in this case, I'm going to go to the images and then to the campaign folder. And then here, I'm going to, let's see, here's some ice assets. I guess what I'll do is I'll just come in here and I will make another folder. I'll just say random snow maps. And then I'm going to paste those in here. So there we go. So a lot of these don't have a grid, which is good. No grid, no grid. That's what you want. All right, so once you've done that, go ahead and click refresh. And it'll update the contents of your folder or whatever you're viewing. And then I can click on random snow asset. And here they are. So I'm going to use this one here. And this is a kind of a scene that someone's made. I'm not sure what they use, but it's not too bad. This is not Kris's work. I don't even know who made this, to be honest. Let's see. And the next asset is going to be a picture of that. So here's a picture in 3D of that photo, which I really like that idea. Okay, so those are the ones I'm going to really look at the most right now. So I'm going to go with the, let's look at the actual image. I guess this map was originally created for Roll20, but as you can see, it already has some sort of grid on it. which I thought there was no grid, but this one does actually have a grid. All the rest of them don't. So if that's the case, that's the first thing you want to work on, is getting the grid lined up. So hopefully it lines up fairly easy. So I'm going to click to the grid option, and it's 50 by 50 set right now. So if I click on this eyeball for visibility, yeah, it's only like not even that. So if I look at that as an asset, I'll look at 75. Here's 72, and that's still too small. Here's 100, and as you can tell, that's still a little bit on the small side. So probably 150. So it really helps when you know what the scale is, and then being that this is a Roll20 map, my bet is it's 140. Yeah, that looks right. So generally, if you buy maps from Roll20, they will be sized at 140 by 140. Yeah, that's right. And now if you want to kind of back off this color here and the opacity and all that stuff, you can pick the color picker and change the color to the color you want. So I changed it to a light blue, and then I'm going to turn down the opacity so it's not so bright and not so annoying. So that, even that's still a little bit much. So there's the color, and then I'm going to change the alpha. Okay, so you're really just seeing the original lines. So each one of these squares is 5 feet. So if you ever purchase anything on Roll20 in regards to maps, usually their scale requirements is 140 by 140. If you're doing fantasy grounds, it can be 50 by 50 or 100 by 100, depending on who makes the map, but I wouldn't go over 100. I think 72 is kind of the sweet spot, but then your map dimensions have to change too. So that's pixels per square inch. So the more pixels per square inch, the higher quality. As you can see, as I zoom in, there's a lot less fuzziness. When you get a map that's like 50, it'll be a lot more blurry. Normally the 50 works. But I've seen maps that are based off 60, 72, and 100. Those are generally pretty nice looking, and they're not too big. So if you're going to use any pictures, just make sure the total file size is not huge. That's what you want. So now that I have this, now what you would probably do is, this isn't much to do any line of sight on, is you'll probably just trace around the tops of these trees and then trace some terrain around this rock feature and maybe around some of these other rocks. And then you can just use effects to kind of round it out. I mean, this isn't really much of a line of sight map to use. But I'll go ahead and do a little bit of line of sight on this. So if I go and switch to the wall mode, now I'm working with the line of sight tools. So I'm going to go ahead and put terrain on this rock here, and there's a cave opening, which I'll put a doorway in there later. But I'm going to go ahead and do the outline for this first. So I'm going to go to line mode, and I'm going to click on this little Christmas tree icon. It's like a pine tree. And I'm just going to start drawing these out. And as you can see, I mean, I didn't do anything fancy. I mean, I can come in here and straighten these out. Like if you want to adjust these, I can come in here and move these points. So it all depends on how picky you want to get. So you can just adjust as you need. Since this is a doorway, I'll be a little bit more picky about it. There we go. So there's the cave opening, and then the rest of this, if you wanted to, you can kind of fix it up. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just as long as it kind of shows what you're looking for. There we go. And if you wanted to, you could put some up on here. So if I go to the line mode, there we go. So when you want to stop making a line and you're in the middle of drawing, you want to do a double click on your last dot or where they intersect, or you can hit the escape button. I like the escape button because sometimes when I double click, I'll actually form another circle, and it drives me nuts because you're actually triple clicking. So again, when you want to adjust the lines, make sure you are in the selection tool, not the drawing tool. So don't be in one of the other circles or lines, because that'll just drive you nuts. Okay, so that's basically just rough on that, just so when you have line of sight active, it'll just kind of show the shadows in there. And in case you climb up on here, that's why I made it terrain. So if you climb up on here, then you can turn it on or off. Normally, I would have just put solid line, red line, but in this case, I made terrain. Okay, so the next thing is the doorway for the cavern. So it's going to be pretty irregular. So normally it would be a line or a square. But this is a big cave mouth, so what I'm going to do is switch to the door mode and go to line mode. I'm going to start right here. So that's roughly going to be the opening. I probably should have followed the shadow, but this thing here may not work with this doorway. So I'm going to go back to select mode. And I might just delete this. There we go. And then I might try to see if I can join these. Nope, that's okay. So I got a kind of a goofy thing in here, but other than that, it should be fine. So now would just be the trees. So honestly, I would just take an ellipse tool and go back to terrain and just draw out circles around the tops of these trees. I'm only going to do these larger ones. That is much quicker than trying to trace around them. But I'm going to go back and adjust a little bit, but you shouldn't have to do a whole lot. So like here, so you can go around and make these adjustments if you see fit. So if you have branches sticking out, you can kind of show that. So it just depends on how fancy you want to get. Josh showed me something cool the other day. So let's just say that this was a large tree blowing in the wind. So what he said you can do is do multiple layers of effects on this tree. So I'm going to start working with effects, but basically that's how you would work on these trees and stuff. I might do this one too. So it just depends on your taste and how much detail you want to get into. Yeah, thanks TXC Boy 36. Yep. Not really a class, just kind of playing around, but I'm explaining what I do as I go along. So yeah, we'll have formal classes and more formal videos as time goes on because this tool is changing daily. So it's really tough to say, this is how you do it. And then 2 weeks later, no, you do it this way now. Okay, so This is basically the ellipse tool, and it allows you to make circles quicker. And then you would just stretch the points where you need them. The next thing I'm going to work on, so we did a little bit of terrain, we did one doorway, and then we did some of these trees. So the next thing I'm going to do is the effects. So I'm going to add an effects layer. And while you have this down, you want to make sure you lock it into place. That way this layer won't move on you on accident. Because if you go into layer mode and you accidentally click on this where it defaults to that, you're going to end up moving the map. You don't want that. So now I'm going to add a little bit of snow. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the effects, or at least select that tool, and I'm going to make an effects layer down at the bottom. And now I have to select the effect. So it'll be the snow one. And as you can see, it's starting to snow. Now, you don't want the snow outside of this map. So while you're still in the tool, you want to put on a layer that covers everything, even though it's still there, it's behind the mask. And you're going to go ahead and reveal, which is this eyeball. And I'm going to draw a square around this whole thing, or a rectangle. That way the snow isn't happening outside of the map. And now you have all this to work with. Now you can play around with the snow. So I turn down the amount a little. I turn up the intensity, and it's a little much. And I'm going to turn the speed down a little bit so it's not as fast. And then the size of the kernels, and shut those down a little bit. Now it really looks like there's a little bit of snow coming down, even though the sun's out. Maybe there's a passing cloud. So I will add that. So again, I'm going to add another layer. And I'm going to use the drop down to select. And in this case, it's going to be clouds. And that'll give us that filtered look that we want. I will turn the speed down. Actually, the speed is pretty decent. It's going from... Yeah, I like that. The speed's not too bad. And then you can change how dark it is. So I'll cut that down for shadows and clouds. And then you can turn the shadows up so that looks like passing clouds or causing shadow on the ground. And then your offset is whereabouts are these shadows going to land. So I'm going to have them on the edge of the map as opposed to right on top of it. And that should be it. So this is clouds and snow. So what I'm going to do is make a folder on the bottom here. And we'll call this map effects. And I'm going to drag these in here. And you want to make sure the clouds are above the snow. Otherwise, it won't look quite right. So there's the map. And now what we can do is I'm going to demonstrate this tree here. So I'm going to go back to line of sight mode. And you can, now that you have this folder, you can actually change the visibility so you can see what's going on. Or you can turn it off so it doesn't distract you. And I'm going to put a layer in here of water. So even though it's not a water feature, I'm going to put that on here and I'll show you why. So I'm going to go to the map effect and I'm going to select water. Now, obviously, we don't want that. So again, I'm going to click on the enable mask and I'm going to click on the reveal area. And the only area I'm going to reveal at this time is this top part of this tree. So I'm just going to go to and just kind of drag and drop and kind of slice around this top part. In order to do this correctly, you have to hold down the Alt key and trace around. And then I'm going to do another one. And then I'm going to do a little bit more of an outline one. You could put it on a different layer, which would make it look even better. So what this is going to do is kind of simulate wind. So I need to adjust the water first. So turn down this horizontal movement and the intensity and the speed and the droplet size. So now the droplet size is only a small amount. The actual speed is at 1. And if you did this on the entire map, you would get the illusion that the trees are blowing in the wind. So that's a way that you can kind of enhance the map. So now if I turn back on the line of sight and the wind and all that stuff, you can kind of see it just barely moving underneath the snow. And that's what you want. It's kind of a blended effect of movement in the trees. I might do it on all the taller trees and just a little tiny bit on the smaller ones. But you have to be real subtle or it's really noticeable. So as you can see, you can kind of see it underneath there. And you would want something like that underneath the other layer. So under this map effects, I want not the clouds. I want the clouds, the snow, and then the water effect. Because that's lower than most of the other stuff. So that way it's not getting in the way of the snow. So that is basically how you could utilize some of the map tools creatively. Hey, Forded, what's going on, man? Good to see you again. Okay, so now that we have that, now what I'm going to do is jump over. I'm going to lock this temporarily and move over to a different map. So instead of closing it, I'm going to resize it. And then I can use this zoom to so that the map kind of zooms to the size of the frame. I'm going to place it up here, and then I'm going to drag and drop for shortcut. Now I'll close it. So now I want to look at that photo. So this map is obviously a different view of what we have here on the map. So what I'm going to do, I'm first going to link the two maps or the handout. So I just drug this over and set this on this map, and then I'm going to drag this map and set it on this particular map. So they are both pinned to each other. So that way I don't have to look for it. And then when I'm on this map, I'm going to put the pin right there. Actually, right behind the rock. So the view is from right about here, where this tree falls here. Okay, so that's that. Now I'm going to put a similar effect on this map. So I'm not only going to do I'm not going to do line of sight necessarily, but this would be a great map to use for theater of the mind. So if you didn't have that map, you could use this for theater of the mind. I'm going to go ahead and add an effects layer, and I want to lock this first. Now I'm going to add an effects layer, choose the effect, and again, I'll use the snow. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put a layer on it, go to the reveal mode, and I'm just going to reveal the map. I don't want the whole screen. So that frames it in here. Now I'm going to slow down, turn up the intensity, turn down the speed like I did on the other map, and then the size too. It's going to be down to almost nothing. Okay, so that kind of spruces up the map. Now to make it a little bit darker and not so sunny, you can kind of change the shadows. So I'm going to go ahead and add, let's see. So this is going to be time of day. Okay, and the amount is there. And we could say it's like in the morning, and that's it. So we kind of made it a little bit darker so it's not quite as bright. And I don't, other than making wind and stuff moving in the trees, I might put some mist in there just to kind of give you the impression that there's clouds and moisture in the air. So I'm going to go ahead and add one more effects layer. This time I'm going to go with mist. And I'm going to put the amount down quite a bit so it's not as obvious, and obviously the speed. So depending on which way, the speed will reflect that. Now, as you can see, again, I have this big old thing here. So I want to put the mask on. That way it's only there. And then the time of day, you could do the same thing. You put the mask on, and then only show your area that you're using. And then up here, I missed some of the snow part. So I want to go to snow. And again, I'm going to reveal just this top piece. Yep, I did it wrong. So I'll just mask it now. So anyhow, that's how you do the snow part. So now you just liven this up. So it doesn't look as generic and silly as, as just a picture. It'll actually bring this to life. If you want to get really fancy, you can put tokens in here that are customly built so they fit behind these rocks and do all kinds of cool stuff. In this cave, we can kind of make it look like there's a fire inside here, maybe just the shadows of it. Be kind of hard to do because those are geared towards top down. So the effect may not turn out the way you want. But if you wanted to change like some color fluctuation or something in there, you could do that with the color changer. There's just all kinds of creative usages. Now for all these effects, I'm going to create a folder. Call it effects. So time of day is going to be the main one. Mist is going to be probably under the snow. And then the snow is going to be in the forefront. So that's basically how you want to do that. And then you can turn this off or on so you're not as distracted. And then that time of day thing, I think the mist, I'm going to turn that up a little bit. There we go. And then the speed. That way you can actually see more of the movement. And that's basically it for the photo. So you have a photo that kind of ties into the image of the map. And then you have the map, of course. So that is basically what that does. Now let me grab a character. So you should always have a test character so you can test out your line of sight. So I'm going to go ahead and import a character by clicking on this import character button. Bring in Sterling. So I added him to the campaign. Now he's on the combat tracker. Now I'm going to put him on the trail. Okay, here he is. Now line of sight is not active right now, so I need to turn it on. So I'm going to unlock this, make sure I'm in play mode, and then turn on line of sight. When your character, or when you pick it up, is when it shows. So that is basically the trees just being filtered out. And the rocks. So now the door is closed. If you open it, you supposedly can get in. As the game master, you hit shift and click to lock the door. That way they can't just walk right in. Depends on what kind of door it is. In this case, it can probably just walk right in. So it's open, it's not closed. So that is just a basic example. Once they get the dynamic lighting out, they won't have these long streams of light. It'll only go out to a certain point. That way it doesn't reveal the whole map if you haven't been over here. And then I notice the mist is still going in the background. So if I go to the mist layer, or the cloud layer, I should say, and then I go to effects, I need to click on, make sure I'm on clouds and effects. And I'm going to actually turn the speed up a little. And then I want to mask the area around the map. And then I'm going to go to reveal. There we go. That way it's only on the map and not on the outside. So there we go. There's a little dude right there. Sterling, the halfling rogue. And to grab these tokens, once they're on there, you're going to go to play mode. And that will make it so that they can actually move. And then I have, if you right click on the map and you click lock tokens, now I can hold down the shift key and move him like a character. Excuse me, alt. So that's the alt key, not shift. It used to be shift. So he's going to dash over to here. So there we go. So that is basically how a real basic line of sight map can go for it's just terrain. And it's not a complex map at all. There's others that have a lot more stuff you got to think about. But that's just basically how you do it. You add something to your asset library if you don't already have it in there. And just remember that you have a data layer, which is available to all campaigns, which is under your images area. Then you have a campaign folder, which is just for this campaign only. So it really depends on your needs and what's going on in your campaign. But if you want stuff more universal and not so specific, you want to put it in the data. The data will have its own tokens, portraits, and images. But if you want it to be in just this session, you'll have your campaign folder, which has tokens, portraits, and images as well. So just remember that. And always remember to be in the correct asset folder. So images for everything, basically, other than tokens and portraits. Portraits are what they are. So if you have custom portraits, you put them in here. And then your tokens are all the tokens for your campaign and other adventures that you purchased. And some of them will have tokens with it. And this is also where all the basic tokens are stored. And that's in the data folder. And then the rule set just has some transparent ones in there. But you have all these different things that you need for different applications. So just remember where you're at. And that's true of the tool too. Let's go back over the tool. So I'm going to unlock it. Okay, so you have play mode, which is what you're going to use when you're actually playing. You have to enable line of sight. So if I disable it, it turns off. If I enable it, it turns on. So you got to get used to that. Sometimes it's not on when you open up. You can unlock or lock tokens from here. And then you can have a snap to grid toggle on. And then you have a show or hide shortcuts, which is your pins. So if you want to get rid of your pins temporarily, you can, turn those off. Make sure you lock your folders and your assets once you're done. And if you combined assets, they'll all be operated or treated as one. So if you add a table and chairs, you put them on the same layer, and then you put them in a folder, when you go to move those, they move together instead of individually. So that's kind of a cool thing. So it just depends on your needs. But anyway, so if you want to, make this fancier, you can always add more stuff to it. The other thing is you can brush things in, like if you were going to use the brush tool and you had a certain texture you want to paint with, you can do that. It just depends on what your needs are. Layers mode is good for tiles and for the assets I was talking about, like chairs and tables. So if you have assets, which I do, so the assets would be in the images folder. And then in this case, the campaign folder. And then I have some ice assets here. And then these are ice tokens. So if you look in here, there's a tomb. There's some different colored things in here. So I'm going to bring over this token here. I don't know, it's a tomb of some sort. So I'm going to drag and drop that up to the stamp. And this is in layers mode. Now, when I look at this, it says 1.1. So that means that's going to fill 1.1, or just outside of the square box. So if I stamp it, it's just going to stamp it when I click on the map. And that's it. Now, if you need to resize it, you can do it from here. So if you want to go 2 by or 1.5, you can do that, but it won't affect this one because you have to have it selected. So it'll affect this next one. So see that change didn't take effect till I did the next one. So to fix this one, go to the selection tool, and then you can just hold down the control or the shift key, shift, and now that one is at 1.5 as well. And I'm in the selection layer tool, that way you don't get confused. Now what you could do is move these on either side of the wall here. If you want to turn them or anything, you can use these buttons here, counterclockwise. So you can do whatever you want, or you can manually turn it. Then that way you can do whatever. So you can make it oblong too. So it just depends on your needs. And then once those are placed on your map, then you would make a folder and drag them in there. And then you can lock this if you want. But now in folder mode, when you go to move them, they move together as a unit instead of as individual pieces. So that's handy if you make like a chair and tables and you want to move them all at once or something like that. So that way it's not too crazy. But that's how you kind of work with your assets. You can also change the colors on them. You could change the opacity so they kind of blend in better with the background, so they're not so much contrast. So it all depends on your needs. And this red layer out here means it's locked, so it can't be moved on accident. So that's basically how you work with those, and you could add stuff like this to your map to enhance it or to fit with your scenarios that you're running. The less the better, so you don't have to manage too much stuff, but it's kind of cool to have some of these broken tablets on the outside. Then you can find some rocks and like place them around it so it looks more like they fit in with the background, like layer some rubble around here so it looks like maybe these used to be the doors and they were broken out. So it just depends on what you want to do. Okay, so that's that. I think I'm going to try, let's see, I'm going to go to my assets again. I want to find a map that's a little bit more complex. So go to data, go to images, and I think I'm going to go to the data folder. Yeah, see, that's not exactly what I want, but this would be like more line of sight, but you'd be using, yeah, I'll try it. Let's see. So I don't want a grid on there. So open up images and maps, drag that in there. This opens up, and now what you'd have to do is contour draw around this whole thing with the red solid line. So I can do that. So first of all, we want to lock it. We don't want it to move. Then we want to change to the line of sight tool. And then we want to switch to terrain. And then we want to switch to the line tool. And all we're going to do is just kind of trace around here until it's all traced out. So I'm going to start up here. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, and work my way around. And I've already started in the wrong tool, so you got to watch that. I'm in terrain. I want to be in the actual wall mode. When you want to stop or you need to take a break, you double click and that will stop the drawing process. When you want to pick back up, you go back to that square and start. Use the arrow key to navigate. So there's different ways to do this, and I heard that some people will use a Wacom tablet to do the tracing, and then all the rest of them they'll just use their mouse. So anyways, you have to trace all this out, and then if you want to put any like mist or effects, that would be cool. And you can load this up with assets because this one's blank, it doesn't have anything in it. And then you could set up your encounter in here. So this would be kind of a fun map to play in. But as far as doing line of sight and such, it'd take a little while to trace around all this stuff, depending on what you consider it. And then here is like a little ice pond, so that probably wouldn't be water. But over here, you might have a little bit of water mixed with ice until you get to the edge. So it depends on how you perceive this, but it looks mostly frozen on the top. So you can put a real subtle amount of water in there. And then all your openings looks like are in here, these two holes. And then there's an opening here. So it just depends on how you perceive the map. I think that's good enough. I've rambled for a good hour and a half. Any questions before I leave? I'm going to call it a day. I think I've done enough for the time being. One of these days, I'm going to get a really good map together and put everything in there and call it a good, and probably film it too. So that way, if you want to go back and kind of learn the whole process, you can do it that way. Then what I'll do is I'll chop it up into pieces and edit it, so you don't hear all the and blank spots and basically where there's no instruction. Okay, so I'm going to call it good. You guys have a good weekend, and I will see you guys around. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.